Hello, uh, we are back. This is one of those Wednesday surprises with 5 minutes with KeRusso. Uh, However, I guess it's not really a surprise um, if I'm telling you it's going to happen. Maybe I should start calling them Wednesday extras. Well, I'll do that. And this one is not going to be just 5 minutes. I'm giving you a heads up on that. It'll take a little bit longer. But if you'll slow down and you'll spend time with me, I believe this is going to be worth that time. Um, it's a good thing to slow down and spend time with God. I'm not God, but I'm going to share something from His Word. Um, and when you spend time in God's Word and spend time with Him, that's good. And you can't always squeeze that time into just a few minutes. Um, Sometimes our spirits need to spend an extended time with God. In fact, I think that is a lot. That happens a lot. We need this. During this pandemic, you're getting the opportunity to slow down in some parts of your life, and I believe that's a good thing. And I hope you remember that and experience the goodness of it, so that when you come out of this and all these other opportunities and alternatives are going to start grabbing your attention and start competing for your time and energy. I hope you're going to be able to say no to some of those things just so you can sit still and be with God for a while. Um, Now, I'm reading for you another story out of this book, one I wrote, When God Speaks, Will You Hear? Um, I'm not going to be reading out of this book for you very often. This just happens to fit into what I'm trying to do with you through the Gospel of John and help you understand that by seeing what the encounters were like that Jesus had with people or thinking about what those encounters could have been like. This is my imagination. Uh, as I dwelt on this one particular encounter and thought about this. And so I'm going to read it for you. There are other stories in the book. If you find this of interest, you can go to a website, booksbycaruso.wordpress.com, and there will be several links, one for blogs and testimonials and books. Click the word books, and it'll take you to a page that tells you more about how to get a hold of this book, the different formats that it comes in, and that kind of stuff. So you can check that out if you want to, if you find this book is of some value for you. There's a lot of other stories that are in there that I'm not going to read. But I want to read this one. And I haven't told you who this encounter is. Last week I shared with you the story of an encounter Jesus had with a woman. Well, today I want to share with you an encounter that Jesus had with a man. And you figure out who he is. You've been reading the Gospel of John. See if you can identify who this man is and what the encounter was about. Okay, so let's begin. I'll read a short story for you. Who can understand the bondage that position places on a person, except those who know those chains personally? People who hold no position are not bound by the expectations that come with the position. They are free to do as they think and free to do as they please. They do not have to answer to the masses. It is the one of position, the one who leads the crowd, that has to meet the greater expectations of the crowd. Heavy are those restraints on a man's heart, but heavier still are the chains placed on those who lead alongside other leaders. Perhaps this man is to be most pitied of all, for not only must he please the masses, he must also conform to his peers. The freethinker should not serve alongside those who only seek to conform. That is a terrible strain that one places on self, desiring to be free but also desiring to be accepted. Such people often live in contradiction with themselves because they are not free to express what their spirit knows to be true when that truth is different from the accepted beliefs. One must either break free from the conformers or one must put to death his spirit, because no man can live peacefully while he is in contradiction with himself. Long had this one man desired to be a leader. He had worked hard for his heart's desire. Many hours he listened to wiser men instruct him in the finer points of being a leader. Even more hours were spent in becoming part of their world. He knew how to pay a compliment to those he wanted to please. He knew when to speak and when to be silent. He knew the honor code of his society. He had become skilled in the fine art of politics. He knew that survival in such a world depended upon honing those skills well. It was not that long until his time of recognition came. He became part of the ruling council for his people, and he became one of their leaders. He sat in council with these wise men of his society. Though younger, he could hold his own with the older men. He just had to know when to speak and when to be quiet. He had to know which way the winds blew before he made his thoughts known. Was that not the exercise of wisdom? He could go far with such an attitude. Yet a disturbance came into his tranquil life for which he had not prepared. Something unexpected occurred that no one could have envisioned. The man who claimed to speak for God intruded into his mind. Truly, that was his art. This man who spoke for God seemed to insert himself into the public mind at will. Indeed, those on the council spent much time discussing him and keeping tabs on his activities. Many on the council had gone to hear the man who claimed to speak for God. They came back with incredible stories. Sometimes they spoke of miracles that he had done. Those on the council were amazed at what they saw, but they would never say so publicly, because as they listened to this man who claimed to speak for God, they discovered that they did not like him. He spoke harshly of those on the council. He told the people that those who were leading them needed to repent. Unheard of! No one speaks of the council that way and gets away with it. No, he is not a good man. He is an enemy, this man who claims to speak for God. Being a member of this elite council, this young man listened to the talk that took place behind closed doors. He wondered what was so terribly bad about what this new teacher was saying. As he listened to those who served with him, he understood that they could not prove the new teacher wrong. However, new teachings never sit well with those who conform, especially when they feel threatened by those new teachings. This young man was on the same council, but he was not a conformer at heart. He had tried to be, but when he heard the words of the one who claimed to speak for God, he felt drawn to him. He liked what he heard, even if he did not understand it fully. Why shouldn't this new teacher be heard? Were not others free to move about with their teachings? Many teachers walk about and teach what they believe, and many times they disagree with one another. Many serve on this council and argue and bicker over finer points of the law. Why should this new teacher not be allowed the same freedom? These thoughts he would have to keep to himself when he was among those on the council, because they would turn on him if they knew what he was thinking. As this free-thinking young leader considered the new teacher's words, he could not escape his appeal. He could not get his words out of his head. It was then that he decided to go and hear the man who claimed to speak for God for himself. He would go and talk with him directly and form his own opinion. He would not allow others to tell him what to think. Pursuing freedom and a new direction is exciting and can be an intoxicating experience. But breaking free of conformity can be a dangerous thing for a leader. One must go about it with some measure of wisdom and caution. And so it came to be that this freethinker went to see the new teacher at nighttime. No one else on the council need to know of his intent. He found out where the teacher stayed, and and stole away at night to talk with him. Words cannot express how his spirit was stirred that night. The words the teacher spoke made his head swim with thoughts he had never considered. Surely this man did speak for God. He taught as no one he had ever heard before in all his years of training. There was authority in how he spoke and in what he spoke. It was like a fresh wind in a room that had long since grown stale and suffocating with dead air. He stayed as long as he dared stay with the teacher. He had to leave before he was discovered, but he now knew the truth. His mind raced with new thoughts and new understandings. In another place and in another time, he would surely have followed this teacher. But now he was a ruler on the council. He lived in a world where he had to conform if he wanted to survive. And being on the council, he had already heard some of the whispers of what they wanted to do to the man who claimed to speak for God. That was not a fate he wanted to share. Besides, his people back home had their expectations of him that he must fulfill. And this is how the young freethinker started to live in contradiction with himself. He sat with men who hated the man he admired most. He sat in meetings with men making stuffy talks and meaningless points over trivial matters, while out in the countryside the teacher shared words from God that reshaped people's lives. He would give anything to trade places with any of those poor who were free to follow the teacher. But he had to live within the restraints of his world. A man cannot live in contradiction to himself for long before the contradiction begins to torment him and the truth begins to leak out. Sooner or later, that man has to make a decision. Either he will follow the way he believes to be true, or he will sentence himself to a tortured life of conformity. One day, as he sat among those on the council, he listened to their discussion about the man who claimed to speak for God. These men he used to admire and flatter looked different to him now. They were full of venom. They hated the teacher and were infuriated by him. It seemed all they could talk about was how to stop him. But what is so bad about what the teacher tells the crowds of people who swarm to him? This freethinker thought to himself. One day, this young man almost made a fateful mistake when those on the council were ranting and raving about the teacher. The truth leaked out a little. He forgot the rule of being silent when you disagree with the conformers if they are in greater number. While the men on the council were attacking the one who claimed to speak for God, he spoke up for him, offering up a point of law that he thought would be harmless yet helpful. Does our law condemn someone without first hearing from him? And quickly all eyes turned to him and turned on him. Are you one of his too? It was an instant and quick rebuke. He was startled at how quickly it had happened. He had been careless. Would that be the end of it, or would they press him with questions? Did anybody detect how deep his true feelings went? Would they be suspicious of him now? He must watch himself, because such outbursts can lead to worse things than a sharp rebuke. The strain of the contradiction within him was increasing. The pressure was building, and he felt as if he would explode. Sooner or later, he had to decide who he would be. Would he conform against all that he now believed, or would he pay the price to break free from those who pressed conformity on others? That day rapidly approached, and this freethinker knew it. He knew the plans the council had to seize the man who claimed to speak for God. They would railroad him through the mockery of a trial. The teacher he had come to believe in would be killed in a cruel and horrific manner. His voice would be silenced by those with whom he sat on the council. This young man had to make a choice. The day came when those dark events unfolded before his very eyes. The teacher was indeed arrested and eventually killed. It is said that the free thinking young man joined another man who also sat on the council, a fellow freethinker. He too had followed the one who spoke for God in secret. He too, when the teacher was killed, that man went to the governor and claimed the body. Then he gave up his own burial place for the teacher to be laid. This young, free thinking man joined him in burying the one who spoke for God. It was a very public thing to do for one who served with conformers. Perhaps that is when he made his choice. So that's the story of the encounter that Jesus had with Nicodemus. Did you pick up on that? I'm surely you did. Nicodemus appears several times in the Gospel of John. If you'll spend some time thinking about a man like him, like I was able to, then you'll begin to see him as flesh and blood. Somebody like you, maybe you have to deal with peer pressure. Maybe you have to deal with people's expectations of you, and maybe you feel constrained and not able to follow Jesus the way you want to. But maybe his teachings stir your heart as well. And maybe you're living in contradiction with yourself. Well, if you can identify with Nicodemus, then the stories of his encounters with Jesus just might be helpful for you. Now that's all for today. Again, this is the book I read this from. If you're interested, you have that information. If you want to send any notes to me, you can do it by making comments on this channel or sending me an email at booksbycaruso@gmail.com. I'm going to get back with you. I'm going to spend about another week with you in the Gospel of John. I hope you will spend more time than that. But I want to spend at least one more week with you. And Friday, I'll touch back with you. And it'll be 5 minutes, thereabouts. 5 minutes with KeRusso. So you have a blessed day. That is my hope for you. And may God just guide your steps closer to Him. Thank you.